Hi there, and welcome to Faith for Finances. My name is Sam Piercy. I am your host, and this week we are talking about to talk or not to talk about your dream. And I am joined by my husband. We are going to talk about the early days of MoneyMinding. In fact, we're going to go back to a story that kind of launched the whole thing and where MoneyMinding actually became a whole process and a whole system. We're going to talk about us buying our last house with no money down, bad credit, new self-employed income, a really hot real estate market, and a not very fun place to live at the time that all this came together. So welcome back to Faith for Finances. My name is Sam, and I want to introduce you to my husband, Joe. Joe and I have walked this journey together. In fact, I would say that MoneyMinding has been birthed out of our journey. And I'm going to put him on the spot a little bit, as we'd like to share about what it was like when we didn't have a system. We had faith, we were believers, but we hadn't actually walked this out. We had no teaching, we didn't have a system, but maybe I had a bigger dream. We both had a dream. Tell them where we started. Let's go back to Bowker. Let's go back to where we were. From your perspective?
Well, your dad kicked us out of his house.
It wasn't exactly like that.
It was time to move on because we were in transition from Vancouver, landed at his place, then we found an apartment, I don't know, a few blocks away from where we used to live in our home, which we sold, and now we're in the basement floor level of an apartment. Our daughter was 2-ish.
No, she was she was in grade 1.
Okay, grade 1.
She was in grade 1.
I thought it was great. She could climb out her bedroom window, play on the lawn at the apartment. The landlords would come down. So
it was not fun.
We weren't on the same page. As I was kind of comfy, it was okay, and she was like not okay.
Totally not okay. We had a nice home. Our garden was featured on the Garden of the Week. Mm-hmm. I had previously had a corporate job, but it was almost classic. We accepted the Lord Jesus, and we were in Vancouver. We were doing consulting. I was actually teaching finance and working with the regulators and financial institutions, but we got nailed with, I've never seen that happen before. Oh, that should be fine. And our life ended up finding us railroaded into a bankruptcy. And now we were back a few blocks from where we had lived in the apartment.
Yes.
And so we weren't really on the same page because Joe was just kind of getting, I don't know, we weren't comfortable for sure, but I was very uncomfortable.
I was doing my thing and you weren't comfy.
Yeah, we weren't.
So
I didn't want to live like that, for sure. And we were talking one day, and so we're in the basement, so we're kind of looking up. And I really felt like God hit me over the head with a 2x4 and said, okay, you want a house, go buy a house. And you know, when God puts something on your heart and it seems absolutely impossible, and maybe you're not even on the same page with your spouse, you kind of are, but you kind of aren't, it's sort of an impossible situation. And yet God is in the possible. And so I remember very clearly going, yeah. But the hardest thing that we did was probably this.
Writing it down.
Writing it down. And really, it's the thing that anybody can do. So we knew that we couldn't stay where we were. And so we grabbed a pen and we started writing our next home. And we did this on September 14th, 2003. And it was less than 6 months. And we'd actually moved into that house. But
yeah, it was kind of like it was like pulling teeth for a little bit, but
Yeah. So we're titling this episode "To Talk or Not to Talk About Your Dream," but what about when it's your spouse?
Yeah.
So
Because you're probably not always going to be on the same page. So somebody's got to take the initiative, and usually it was you. But I'm the worker guy in the back most of the time. So when we wrote everything down, we did all that, we prayed about it, and when you put the word out to people, it's funny how God works. And it was our non-believing friend that actually phoned us and said, "Hey, did you see this house?" And it was actually in the days when there was little ads in the paper, and it was about this big. And so we found it, and we went and knocked on the door because it was for sale by owner. Went in, went back we chatted with him. It was awesome. Went back that night and basically bought it. It was everything that was on our list except for the outside color.
Which we never made it onto the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was pink.
We had a pink house. We joked about it for the longest time. It then did get painted.
Yeah.
But I guess the hope in all of that is there was one of us had a vision, and I think we really did both have a purpose, because the reason we were in that particular apartment and the reason we were there was because we wanted our daughter to go to the school that his family had gone to. We wanted to live in that general area, and we wanted to raise our daughter that way. So we had the same purpose, and I think we did have the same vision. I maybe had a little bit more faith in stepping out, and it doesn't matter. I mean, the hope in that is we weren't on the same page exactly, but we did it. And the process of getting from writing it down, which really was a miracle on its own, to then looking at properties on some days really did seem like a struggle, because we couldn't see it. And in the end, though, it was less than 6 months.
Yeah, we looked at probably 50-ish properties. We actually physically went into about 50-ish, and then probably online we probably looked at like 100 total. So it wasn't just we went out and found one, but we looked and we knew what we were looking for, and it was easy to pass them by. It's like, nope, that's not it. So.
Even the ones that were way, way, way outside of anything that we thought we would ever even want to live in or could afford, we looked at them. And if you knew our financial situation at the time, you would think, oh, what are you doing that for? But we got great ideas. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about some of the ones with the indoor swimming pools and some of those things. And it affirmed in us, I think helped unite us in the vision. Yeah, and maybe even, what's that?
Well, we weren't apartment people. Not that there's anything wrong with them. We just needed a home with a garden. And
we just kept on going. We walked it out. And the process of that is when MoneyMinding became a system. And we'll put this up on the screen, but it became a 12-step system, because before that, what we had was a collection of exercises. And sometimes that can be overwhelming. I know you probably talked a lot about, it's too complicated, or there's too much, or, this, that, or the other thing.
Well, it was a bit of a process going through mortgage brokers and having people say, no, you need to move away and save some money. And you went through like 5 of them.
6.
6 of them before you found somebody that said, yes, we can do this, we can work with it, right? So when somebody says no, it's like, well, that's nice, that's your opinion, and you got to keep going because God's put something on your heart or told you to do something. You just got to keep walking it out until you find somebody that's going to help you.
Yeah, keep talking and talking and talking, because if God's put something on your heart, your words affirming that that's what you're doing will lead you to the right people. So yeah, I talked to 6. 4 said, yeah, no. 1 said, move out of town, come back later, which of course went against our purpose. And we also know that goes against the whole concept of real estate too, because real estate is an investment and saving money is not, and none of that would have even worked. We told enough people, everybody knew we were looking for a house. And eventually one of those people asked us if we'd seen it, and we hadn't seen it, because we actually did start to give up hope. Which that was kind of interesting too, because we got really excited about a house that didn't meet any of our criteria, but it was cool. Or the one up by the university.
Oh yeah, our realtor kept showing us stuff, and it's like, no, that's not it.
Just not it. That's not it. But we did get excited, and then we lost hope when that didn't happen. And yet it was somebody that we had talked to before, had said, what about this and what about that? And then just even the connection with the people that owned the home, and we stayed connected to them for a while. Mm-hmm. So to talk or not to talk about your dream, you affirm, and you even start to crystallize, and it morphs and ebbs and flows. And there's definitely scripture that talks about how when the word comes, the enemy will come and snatch it depending on the soil that it lands on.
Also write it down, right?
And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important to write it down, and why you have to keep talking about it and keep in the word and know what God says about that, because we knew that God had a lot to say about homes, and I knew that it was like a Shazam, go buy a house, and I didn't know how to buy a house. I was in investments at the time.
And I guess somebody needs to take the lead, because you're probably not always going to be on the same page and not always the same excitement level. So sometimes one may say something and pulls the other one down, and there might be a little heated discussion every once in a while.
Yeah.
But somebody's got to keep on going.
Yeah. Well,
right?
that's why we have the word, right? Because the word, or we also get support from other mentors that we may or may not know. Books are important, and getting into an environment of supportive people in community, so that even if you get discouraged, or somebody says something that's like, yeah, what are you thinking? Who do you think you are? And that'll never happen, or move out of town. That there's somebody else that will come along and say, tell us about your house. Tell us what you're looking for. Or you start talking about.
Well, you're just sharing the vision, right?
You're sharing the vision, and talking about wanting a fireplace, or talking about entertaining, even talking about, we wanted to have, way back then, we wanted to be able to have Bible studies when we were really coming into developing a hunger for the Word, and learning how to pray and learning how to study the Word. We wanted to have people around and connect with like-minded people and gather and entertain. And so in the process of all of that, MoneyMinding became a system. And because prior to that, it was just a collection of exercises. And so it started with purpose. We wanted to raise our daughter in a particular neighborhood, in a particular environment. We wanted to have a home. We wanted to be able to gather people in our home. We had a vision, even though I probably had more of a vision.
But I built the vision.
That's true. He did. Joe built the vision. I talked about it a lot. And then the seeds are speaking it in faith, and then being able to write it down. So even writing it down for us and articulating some of the things that were on our list, they're really specific. And we talk about this with people all the time. You know what the word says, and have the scriptures that speak to your situation available, so you can speak the word of truth, writing down your vision. And some of these things that we wanted, the neighborhood, the early 1900s with the big front porch, that's right at the top of our list. And so we got that. We knew right away when we drove by the house. We wanted to be walking distance to the school. We wanted a certain size lot so that we could have a garden. We wanted wood floors. We had really awesome wood floors. And we both knew, because we looked and looked and looked, that the second we walked in that house, we just knew.
And good neighbors. Neighbors are, I guess,
that's in here.
A little bit out of your control, but I guess when you pray about it, that He'll bring you
that it is
to a place where you got good people around you.
Yeah, we've always had that. In fact, our neighbors ended up becoming like our family. So then we have to have our seeds, and we have to be able to interact with the financial part. I did investments. So we didn't have the knowledge, we didn't have the understanding. We definitely didn't have the wisdom for how to do it, but we held on to, or at least I did for sure, and it joined us together as we went through this process. I held on to that vision when there was people that were coming against us, and that led us to asking different questions and gaining the knowledge, because we didn't know how. And I've shared many times that it actually took 4 loans to purchase that home. And that's where our faith was. I mean, it doesn't need to take a loan at all. as we know, God provides in different ways, but he provided for us at that point in the form of the connections, those 6 mortgage brokers, and 2 said maybe, 1 is the one that actually came alongside and helped pull it together. And then the introduction to the home, it turned out that the house was actually about $70,000 below market value, which is another one of the profit centers of real estate, is equity on day one. And we had to look, we had to be in motion, we had to activate that faith and be moving in that direction. And I like to share this a lot because this is a cash flow forecast, which is really a series of what most people would call a budget. But the budget tends to focus your attention on what you have, not tends to, it does. It focuses your attention on what you have, and then you subtract from that, and then maybe you add a little bit, but somewhere on the bottom, you come up with a positive or a negative number. And if that bottom number is a long way off from whatever your vision is, if you're just looking at what you can see, which is what finances tends to do, then it will divide because it's going to keep you from that purpose and that desire. You want to speak into that from your perspective at all? As that was harder for you to make that step from where we were to where I was wanting us to go.
Well, it's a big step of faith, right? We're farther along now, so it's like, okay, Father, you've put this on our heart. What are we gonna, we got to trust in you that you've brought us to wherever you are in life, that if you've called us, you will supply our needs because you are our supply. You are our source. So you've put this on our heart. We don't see how we're going to do it, but we're going to keep walking in faith and taking the steps that you are leading us, and it will come to pass. So that's what we've been learning over a bunch of years. And so we just keep walking, that he's got us in the palm of his hands. And
we ended up raising our daughter in that home. We only ever intended it to be a stepping stone. Well, I guess it was an 11-year stepping stone. And then from there, though, God really supernaturally started to work in us because we were helping some friends with a dream. And in the process of that, I think it started to birth in us a bigger dream for a whole ministry center and a retreat center and market gardens and training and, really what we have coming together in the church house now. But that started once we were in that home. And it's a process, because when we were sowing into our friend's dream, it was giving birth to our dream. And in the process, we have a resource that you can get on MoneyMinding.com called Partnering with God for Your Own Home. And it's a collection of house scriptures and then some of the foundational scriptures that have helped us in our marriage and to really come closer together in this process instead of dividing. I mean, it's so often finances and even one person being on a different, how would you say it? Maybe we're in the same book, maybe even the same chapter, but not on the same page.
Sometimes you're in separate books and then you get closer to the same book and, hopefully you get onto the same page.
Right. But that's where God comes in. And God, in marriage, God calls you into oneness. And so instead of dividing, because you're two separate people going maybe even in the same direction, but at a different pace, that oneness is where you get scriptures for your marriage and God brings you closer together. I mean, we shared this on the episode that we had with Ben and Jen on the opportunity to come together on finances instead of dividing, because I think the enemy wants us to be isolated and to doing it on our own and to looking at that which is limited, which almost by default tends to separate. Would that make sense? But for our journey it started slow, it wasn't easy, but he kept leading us along and drawing us to him.
Well, it's easy to start pointing fingers back and forth, and who's doing what, who's not doing what, and that's when we take our eyes off God, get them on ourselves and pour us and blah,
It's
blah,
your
blah,
fault.
where we are, and it's like, oh. So get them back on God, and then you kind of stop pointing fingers and you're back on the same page and working together.
Yeah, well, we know that homes are so important because that's where you're intimate with each other. It's where you're intimate with God. It's where you raise your family. It's where you connect with your family. And so this collection of house scriptures, it starts off with some of our core scriptures and then some of the house scriptures and some of the things that God led us to. I mean, when you actually start to look at the importance of family and how community and everything kind of gets birthed out of your home, you start to go, oh, you know what, that's not greed. That's not, like, it actually matters how your home is. And there's I want to say there's like a level of respect. There's a level of intimacy in all of that stuff and how you care for that. And, you know, we have this.
Well, God is not in disorder. He's order and harmony, and so.
And how you do anything is how you do everything, and the small things repeated consistently produce the biggest results in the shortest amount of time. We went to a really amazing marriage program where we understood, it was kind of our last ditch effort because we did fight a lot through some of the financial challenges, but we went to this marriage program and we really understood a new level of financial of intimacy and oneness. And after that, we came home and it was almost like classic. The enemy was like, okay, problem. And so we started to fight. But do you remember we had a fight where we were like, well, who's going to take the butcher block and who's going to get this and who's going to get that? Do you remember that?
No.
Oh, I remember, because it ended up being...
I just focus on the positive.
Yeah. I remember it was quite comical because we were so angry at who knows what. It was like, okay, that's it, forget it, we're done. But we started to look around at all of our stuff. And we couldn't, it was like the stuff had connected us because everything had a story. And it was treasures or it was families. And you could say, well, it's just stuff. Yes, it is. But in that moment, it also represented the environment, the friends, the vision, the memories. I remember this so clearly because it was kind of, anyways, it was...
I know, I must have blocked it, but we do have a lot of stuff. Stuff just pops up on the side of the road and you have to get it. And now it all kind of fits. And
the treasures.
I guess part of it is if you have a home, it's not just for you. I think it's for opening and sharing and inviting people in and sharing what God has given you with other people, right?
Yeah. We the church house, we didn't know, but some of the treasures that God brought us for free, the side of the road, they are almost like prophetic in the vision that He was calling us to with the retreat center and the ministry center and the rebuilding of the church house. But it's a process. It's absolutely a process, and MoneyMinding is a system. But you just start where you are, and you
can fight the process.
Yeah.
And it takes a little bit longer. Or you can just go with it and see where He leads you.
Yeah. And believe it. Right? It's a choice. Do you trust it or not? Do you trust the finances? Do you trust what you can see? Do you determine the vision based on the size of what the finances are? I mean, if we had done that and listened to that one mortgage broker, move away, come back 5 years later, save some money and then come back. Well, that never would have happened because that house doubled in value in a matter of a couple of years. The whole neighborhood changed over. I mean, our whole life would have been totally different. But that happens a lot, right? People make decisions about the finances instead of about their purpose and their vision and where they're going. Any last thoughts that you want to share?
Yeah, and purpose. I guess what has God put on your heart, like, to do? And regardless of your finances or where you are, what do you really feel on your heart that He wants you to do? And that's kind of the base and the vision. And then you just start walking it out, right? It's not based on the money, because we've done lots of things or haven't done lots of things because of the money or the lack of money. So it's not about that. It's if He wants you to go that way and you walk that way, He will part the sea, open the doors, close the doors.
He'll provide.
He will provide.
It's whether or not we're going to trust it. And I guess if we have anything that we want to share is that the hope that you just start and you just do it, and that He will, if you take a step, then He will provide. I mean, we have another whole story on the $3.79 Christmas, and you know, some of those things. Everybody has a story. You know, you find some money at the side of the road, you just don't know. God's going to connect you to somebody, or connect you to something, or bring something to the side of the road that you can sell. It doesn't matter. What matters more is that God is love. God is got a good plan and a good purpose, and He wants us above all else to connect with Him first, connect with each other in our family, and then to overflow from that, because in all of that He has a purpose for our life.
Well, it's like you talked about, I think it's Indiana Jones, where it's like there's a chasm and there's no way across, and he took a step and a stone appeared, and he took another step and the stone appeared.
Exactly.
Right? So.
Exactly. And so that is what Faith for Finances is. It's a step. We call the process the MoneyMinding method. And so we have been sharing, this is my husband Joe, we've been sharing on some of the early days and how MoneyMinding stopped being a collection of ideas and became a method. And it was in the process of us walking it out, I guess, and God providing us with our home. And now here we are sharing, and so there's hope.
We're still walking it out.
We're always walking it out. Everybody will say the same thing. I'm sure when we're 90, we're still going to be new levels of faith, new levels of hope. And so thank you for joining us. This has been Faith for Finances. Make sure that you get the free resources. You follow us on YouTube and Facebook, and tune in next week. God bless.